Yes, welcome back to the Sunday Footy Show. It is time for Inside the 10. Terry Kennedy, Brent Reid and Steve Mascourt in the house today. Great to see you, Steve.
I've got number 34 on my back.
And we get a good chance to plug your book. Word of mouth is a very, very powerful tool, and I hear touchstones. Rugby league, rock and roll, the road and me is an absolute beauty.
It's a self-help book for people who've obsessed with footy and need to kick their habit. I'm sure there's plenty of viewers out there who have someone in their life who's in that situation.
I'll tell you a good sign. We get a lot of sporting books at work, and that one got stolen within 24 hours.
That's a good sign.
There are some that are still sitting there after 10 years.
I do want that one back. I need that one back.
You've done well.
That's one less royalty, Masky.
Well done to you. Let's get into it. We've got some big issues to discuss today, in particular about two players. First of all, Benji Marshall, as revealed in the Fairfax Press today, heading back to the West Tigers. Terry Kennedy, he's going to be there. Is it the feel-good story of the year, this one?
I don't want to be a party pooper.
Oh.
Let's celebrate for a short space of time the return to Benji Marshall of Leichhardt, because when he was last there, they wanted to hang him from the yard arm because he kept going sideways and sideways and sideways. And in the end, let's be honest, they couldn't wait to get rid of him. Now we take him back to the bosom. Down Mary Street at Leichhardt Oval. Fantastic news for the Tigers brand. Great news for the Tigers media department. Great news for their marketing department. For the team, I don't know, what's he bring?
That's a question, Steve, because, I mean, when you look at it, they've recruited Josh Reynolds in at the halves. Luke Brooks is their permanent number 7. They've re-signed him this year. Tuilolo here there as well. How does it work? Is he going to be that utility like we see at the Bronx?
Look, if you're going to boo this story, you could boo Santa Claus. I mean, it's ridiculous. It doesn't matter what he does on the field. There's not enough romance in rugby league anymore. This is the ultimate romantic story. When I was actually in at Fairfax yesterday, I heard about this when I got in at 2, and I had to stop myself from telling anybody because I thought it was such a good story. So please, cheer up. Lighten up, everybody.
Good yarn.
He's not there to start. He'll do the same role he's done at Brisbane all year, which is back up the halves who are already there. Come off the bench occasionally. I mean, he's not there he won't have a decisive influence on the West Tigers season next year, let's be honest. He'll be there, you know, as a backup and purely a backup. And for that purpose, he's a great signing.
Puts bums on seats.
Puts bums on seats, and that's a club that needs some positive energy, let's be honest, when they're terrible.
Geez, bums on seats. That's exactly what they said at the Gold Coast Titans about Jared Hayne. You blokes are fair dinkum kidding.
Well,
he put bums on
it's a little
seats.
bit different.
He put bums on seats, Jared Hayne, at the Gold Coast Titans for 2 weeks. Now they can't wait to get him on a plane and out of the
Jared
job.
Hayne's not in the twilight of his career, though, is he? I mean, why would Benji Marshall sort of, do anything to harm his situation if he goes back to West Tigers to finish his career? It can only be positive.
Why would Jared Hayne's not doing anything on purpose to harm his reputation?
Who goes then? Is it Jared Hayne that's going to go, or Neil Henry that's going to go?
Well,
Terry?
it's inexplicable that the board at the Gold Coast Titans got to this ridiculous stage where they've signed a player that the coach clearly didn't want. And now Jared Hayne in the media this morning is quoted that he hasn't spoken with all this drama and all this controversy. Jared Hayne hasn't spoken to his coach, or the coach hasn't spoken to Jared this week. That's not workable, and that's as much the fault of Neil Henry as it is Jared Hayne.
Something's got to give Reid.
There's a meeting tomorrow. Graham Annesley, the CEO, and Rebecca Frizzell, the chair, will sit down with the two of them tomorrow. I'm not sure whether they'll sit down with them together, but they'll sit down with the two of them. And you're right, it's toxic. I mean, it's shades of Robbie Farah and Jason Taylor. And that could never work. And this can't work either. And someone's got to go. Now, Jared said, I'll leave. But let's be honest, Jared Hayne's not going to walk away without a massive paycheck, is he? He's not going to walk away and say, cancel the contract, don't give me any money. He's going to want a hell of a lot of money to go. And the Gold Coast is going to be in private hands soon enough. And those private owners aren't going to want to shell out big money for a bloke to play somewhere else.
Good on Michael Carianis for following Jared Hayne out of the ground, taking a picture of him on his phone with his moon boot on, and then asking him questions. Because I think today in journalism, in people doing our job, they just settle for whatever's said at the press conference and go and type it up. And I think there's still stories to be had at the footy, and it heartened me to see that you could still go to the footy, get a guy after the game, and get a good story. Good on you, Michael.
Look, coach, star player at Loggerheads. There's no bigger story within any sort of code. But what you've got to do as a coach is manage your star players. I look at the Premier League on occasions and thinking how these blokes manage these mega stars on $1 million a week, but the good ones do.
Some
the
blokes
coaches
are
and the managers,
Terry. Some blokes are unmanageable.
And
some blokes it gets to a point where it doesn't matter what you do with them, you can't manage them. And look, Jared Hayne hasn't. His performances haven't reflected his paycheck this year.
Correct.
He's completely. The whole club's been disrupted for Jared Hayne. I mean, last year they were top 8 team. This year,
in the end, though, it's easier to sack the coach, and that's probably
that's the
maybe
issue.
just
But
the way it
the
goes.
perception of Jared Hayne has changed more than Jared Hayne's behaviour. You know what I mean? Like,
True.
Jared Hayne hasn't actually done 1,000 different things, but everyone's had 1,000 different perceptions of him this year. It's just a strange...
But he was, even when people had a perception that he was flaky years ago, He used to play well every now and then. He hasn't played. When's he played well this year for the Gold Coast? When's he had a good game
Campbelltown after
this year?
Origin too, but that was a very long time ago.
Yeah.
Hey, Reedy, how ugly is this salary cap mess going to get? Because we're hearing that there's a meeting tomorrow between a lot of league bosses thrashing out a lot of issues at the moment. Are we 9.1? Are we 9.2? We're going to be 10 million?
I think they'll actually resolve the salary cap this week. I think they'll get it sorted this week. I don't think Canterbury will be overly happy with the figure, but I think the rest of the league will be, and I think it'll get resolved this week. The salary cap will. But beyond that, there's a lot of other issues they've got to resolve, and that's where they could strike their next hurdle, because they've got to resolve integrity issues, they've got to resolve how much say the players have in the way the game's played in future years, because they want basically a lot of control. So I actually think the cap's a lot closer than people think. I think the financial aspects of this deal will get knocked over before Thursday. There's obviously the big meeting on Thursday. So I think the cap's maybe not as... I think we've sort of resolved that, or we will resolve that in coming days.
So there's no chance of the cap being challenged in court, which was foreshadowed last weekend?
No, because I think they'll resolve it. I think they'll get it done this week.
Yeah, the biggest challenge really, and let's cry some crocodile tears here for the Bulldogs, all these clubs, I think it's a little bit of a fallacy out here that these clubs were working to a $10 million salary cap. They were warned before a ball was kicked in anger, before the start of the season, to do it their best to work to a $9.2 million salary cap. Now you've got the Bulldogs fronting the media and saying, oh, well, we've signed these players because we thought the cap was going to be $10 million. That is bad management case study 101.
And Nathan Brown stuck to 9.1 in the hope of getting the cast-offs for the teams who went over.
That's good business, you know, and we're going to see a lot of good
It's good
players
business
on
if
the
the
market.
league are actually strict on it, but it's bad business if they're not.
Speaking of dollars, $10,000 fines, Steve, for coaches that bag the refs. Do they have an impact?
I think they do, because Ricky Stewart sometimes corrects himself, controls himself. So I think sometimes the $10,000 fine does have an impact, but I think in other circumstances, coaches actually premeditate their attacks. They maybe even get permission from officials to say this stuff. I used to think that unless you question the integrity of the referees, then it was okay. That you should be able to say whatever you like. But now I look at the difficulty that we have in recruiting referees at junior level, and I think if you actually go over the top, I've actually changed my opinion. And I know there's people out there who argued that I was wrong all those years ago when I said you should be able to say anything. But I'll admit I was wrong, because I don't like the look of completely over the top, questioning the competence of all referees. However, I think you should be able to say you got a decision wrong, and maybe they got 10 decisions wrong, and say what those decisions were. I think you should be able to do that without copying a fine.
Who pays it, Reedy? Is it the club?
Well, the club always pays it, don't they? Let's be honest. They might pretend it comes out of the coaches. Well,
No,
in
it
fact,
comes off their grant at the end of the year. So instead of getting your $3 million or whatever you're going to get at the end of the year, you get it's minus the 10.
That's how it works.
I can't name the last coach that did it. The junior thing's really important, Steve. I spent a lot of time at junior sport on Saturdays and Sundays. Ask Dallin Watini-Zalesniak, got attacked on the sidelines, helping out because nobody else wanted to run the line at an under-12s game, and find out whether the referees don't answer to the public, don't answer to the coaches, like Ricky Stewart said. They don't have to front up. They front up every time.
Couple of quick ones. Reedy, did we see the grand final preview last night with the Roosters and the Storm?
I think we probably did. I'd actually dropped off the Roosters a bit, but I think they showed last night that they're going to be there at the pointy end. I think we saw, and if that's the grand final rematch, then if it matches what we saw last night, we'll see a cracking grand final.
If it's not Steve, who is it?
Steve.
Yeah, I don't. Well, one of the other questions which we don't have time for is Cronulla gone, and I don't think they are. So I still think they can. I still think they can make the grand final. And Brisbane were obviously outstanding the other night. So, but I mean, it was interesting because I heard Trent Robinson in an interview on Triple M, and when he was asked, "Do you deserve to be second, or are you playing commensurate to what you just on the table?" He sort of bit Dan Ganane's head off, and now I understand why, because they are playing well enough to be just behind Melbourne.
Quick one from you, T.
Whoever it is, they run second, don't they?
Yeah.
I mean,
I think the Roosters gave everyone hope last night.
Yeah, they led 10-0.
Yeah.
Here's one for you: if
start.
Melbourne win the comp, will they go to England for the World Club Challenge? I have my doubts. I think they might refuse.
You love the international game, don't you, Steve?
do.
Huh?
He certainly does. Hey, TK, Western Force axed officially this week from Super Rugby. Does the NRL need a pounce on the opportunity in the West?
Yes, but it's not that easy, is it? We've got too many Sydney teams. What Sydney team are you going to get rid of?
TK, you just put out a press release. You say, we're sorry to hear that this team is not going to exist next year. Many players and many fans will be out of a team. We'd like to offer help in any way we can while still respecting our structures in the West. A non-binding, even empty PR statement shows that rugby league is serious about having a national footprint.
I mean, they made the mistake, didn't they, way back in the dark days when the game had to come back. They should have kept that foothold over there. There was even a good foothold for junior footy in the West, and there was even money. But They lost their
The
opportunity.
WARL
unfortunately.
have made those statements this morning too, James, but I'd like to hear head office say that we are serious about Perth and we'd like to offer fans and young players the opportunity to take up 13-man rugby if you're being shunned by 15-man rugby.
In their defence, they are taking Origin game there in
Exactly.
18 months' time.
But
So it's not as if they're ignoring
but
the
expansion
Western
isn't even
Australia.
on the agenda, is it? I mean, really, what does the N in NRL stand for?
Well, there's too many teams in the league now, you could argue, Steve. So
I
you
know.
don't want to add another team.
And if we get rid of the salary cap, maybe we'll get rid of a few Sydney teams.
Yeah.
They send a
No,
few bribes.
because the fact of the matter is, unfortunately, it doesn't matter how badly you try and send a club broke. They always survive on the smell of an oily rag. God bless them all.
I'll tell you what we should be doing. We should go into Twiggy Forest and saying, look, if they're taking rugby union off you, Twiggy, throw some money at rugby league.
Exactly.
We'll take your cash.
Hey, final thoughts for today. Friday night, we saw Parramatta given a dust up by the Newcastle Knights. The Eels knock-around final.
Well, I didn't think
title
I
material.
didn't think they could win the comp anyway. I
Yep.
thought they were a player short, and I think we saw that on Friday night.
You concur, Steve?
Yeah, I agree.
Thanks, Steve.
Too many holes there, TK?
Yeah, I think the loss of Clint Gutherson was a big one. They've surprised me ever since he's been on the sidelines as well. But 1 week's a long time in footy. I wouldn't write them off at all.
And we need their fans, Paris fans. We need them to be coming back every week because they're some of the best in the comp.
Go and say it. When Para's winning,
I'll
rugby
leave the
league is
cliches to
winning.
you, TK.
No cliches in here, though. Good on you, Steve Mascord. Touchstones, get it now. Rugby league, rock and roll. The road and me. Heard it's an absolute beauty.
Thanks for having me
I'm
on,
gonna try and
guys.
keep that. Great seeing you, Steve. Thank you, Reddy, as always.
Pleasure, Steve.
The same as you, TK. That is Inside the 10 for this week. Stay with us after the break. We're celebrating the latest inductee into the 300 Club. See you in a second.